Hello, welcome everybody to the Nonsense Podcast. I'm going to be doing the intro this time. My name is Drew. Nice to meet you. This is Ito right over here.
What's up?
And today we actually have a special guest with us. Joining us today will be Lirish.
Hey guys, what's up?
So, if any of you are unaware, we're going to obviously link Lirish's social media in the description of this video. But Lirish is a large TikTok and anime Instagram um, account. He's been analyzing media since 2020, I want to say, right? 2020, 2019,
Yeah,
around there.
mid 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, started off with the. I personally found him with the Tony videos, actually, when he was
Yeah.
talking with
Classic.
Hunter Hunter and with the Tony stuff.
This
But
man was the Hunter Hive leader, man.
he was
Huh.
definitely push that to the front, honestly, with especially on the TikTok platform. Um, if you don't know of him, again, check it out. He's a fairly one of the largest faces in the small anime analysis community that we have. Um, you know, and basically the topic of today that we wanted to talk about with Lirish is just being a critic in general, right? Um, so first and foremost is all three of us, we love to analyze media. We love to talk about review shows and essentially look at stuff in a more in-depth way than you normally would, right? And I think it's something that once we started doing, I found myself doing it to almost everything I consumed.
Yeah, it's kind of something I can't turn off at this point. It's just like I turn something on, even if I don't want to, I'll catch something and I'll just take a little mental note.
Yeah.
But it's just yeah, it's, at this point it's something that I'm so used to, especially with the note in my mind basically that I'm trying to make content. Because usually with shows now, I'll go out of my way to review them just because I'm already experiencing it. I might as well.
Hmm.
So usually with I would say this whole analysis thing is you get DMs, especially I have Lirish and Drew here to confirm that sometimes a random account will DM you basically searching for a reason why this opinion is more valid. So I kind of wanted to segue into that point if you guys wanted to pick up into that.
Yeah. So essentially, we as critics, well, I don't even know critics. Like sometimes I just review stuff, and sometimes I just like to analyze things. One of the aspects I wanted to get into is why do we think that our opinion holds a little bit more value than, say, someone that's a random Instagram or a random TikTok comment, right? And a lot of that comes down to um, our
The idea of
explanations and our
community.
consistency.
Yeah, the idea of community is a big one as well. Of course, we have value systems and whatnot, but I feel like once you see one person have a certain view and a lot of people agree with that, it's also just the idea of wanting to be right and to want to be seen as one with the proper opinion. And especially like early on, if you remember last year, right? Like a lot of people like they're just associated with the image of some like a content creator that wants to do right. Like remember the sheep era with Tokyo Ghoul,
Yeah.
editing, all of these things. So I feel like aside from the values itself, just the idea of wanting to be structured into something and be seen as right is a big one for sure.
I think that's like it has to do with ego, right? With people that are like, this is my take. How dare you have a take that's different than mine? And it's it's something where I found that a lot of people, when you come to experience a form of media, when you um go and quote unquote like switch up on your values, people get upset at you for that, right? Like I'm sure people have, and like I know that this is something that both of you have done recently, right? So if you want to chime in on the DMs that you got or the kind of general reception where, you read a story or experience something and you're like, you know what, this changed the way I look at things, but then people get upset at you for it.
Yeah, so I'll go real quick. So I would say with Zaragoto, I just finished it. My number one, of course. It's brought about a new appreciation for certain aspects that previously I still valued, but there's always that general appreciation that is always can be elevated once you see a certain thing. And my quote unquote values per se changed, I would say, a while back, because initially it was all about how much can I pull out of this character, how much can I write, how much can I extensively grab and push out so people can see what I'm seeing. But nowadays it's more so that value shifted toward what this holds as its own entity, right? And once you see that value, and of course there's still things to write about because that's where you express why they mean so much, but that kind of value shift is what I feel as though made me more quote unquote consistent with what I'm currently appreciating. And certain things like Zare, for example, push me to appreciate something like Nier more, because as I'm reading this novel for Nier, I'm getting more extensive characterization for basically the driving force of the narrative, with his journey 9S, and characters like Tomo Sane from Subahibi, for example. Even though there's some questionable things in the series, that doesn't necessarily detract from how detailed his character itself is, right?
Hmm.
And he gets elevated, and some people DM me and they're like, "Dude, how is this guy going up?" And that question, right? Sometimes it comes with a bit of malice and a bit of, you can tell there's anger behind like certain people's words, or there's some type of spite,
Hmm.
and having to deal with that, it's basically just, I would say it's kind of, you kind of just have to laugh it off, of course, but to basically validify your point, I find it that it's not necessarily the take itself or the shifts that matter, but how you basically rationalize it. And if you're able to express yourself, I don't find takes themselves to be horrid as long as they align with what you've shown or what your change has shown, right? So if you want to segue in, Lirish.
Yeah. So for sure. Yeah, a big thing that I've noticed, especially since I started shifting towards a different value system, I want to say January, February, is how much art changes you as a person, right? It's a direct reflection of life, right? And as a person changes, the things that they see change as well, right? When you change the way you see things, the things that you see change. And so a lot of people are saying, "Yo, how does your value system keep changing? Why is this character so low all of a sudden?" And to that, all I can say is art has you can approach art with an infinite amount of ways, right? It's not really the approach itself that matters. It's how you align with a certain approach, right? And so I want to say, once again, you could really tell what type of person someone is, just through their rationalizations and explanations of what certain characters they like. Like art is literally like, if you get to know someone, you'll get to know exactly what types of characters, what type of series resonate with them, right? And that once again is a testimony to how much art speaks on personal experience and just taste in general. And so, yeah, I just want to say I've been changing a lot as a person. I've been valuing the humanity behind things a lot, right? Because it's very easy to present something and you can extrapolate a lot from a certain point. You can infer a lot, but I feel like what I've been shifting towards, especially with regards to characters, is just characters that are very grounded, right? Because ultimately, I feel like what a character is a model of a person. And this literally creating a character and being able to follow along their thoughts, emotions, their positioning. I feel I've been really appreciating that a lot more. It's been, once again, it's just been because I've been shifting as a person. And I truly believe that everybody within this community, like, you remember when we valued complexity a lot more, ideas a lot
Yeah,
more. And
I
it was
remember that.
crazy, right?
Yeah,
It's
It
funny
seems like a
because
fever
we were
dream right
going,
now, but back then we really believed in that. And that's the whole
yeah,
100%.
point, right? As people
that shit
change, the
is
value change.
crazy. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like you said, with certain things back then, right? We would go into a series. Let's say like, I think it was Drew. He's like homunculus. Boom. We go into the Discord server. Everybody's like, "Yo, gotta read it." We're sitting there, mind blown. And then a few months later, we're like, "Damn, this just falls flat nowadays." And then I can go right. I'm watching Utena, for example, and I know that in this VC, for example, there we all appreciate NGE to a certain extent, at the very least, and I can go and recommend you Tenna knowing that these two are still going to like it a lot because of how we all see things. Even if it's slightly different, there's going to be variations, but that's not really the issue because I know that at the end of the day, Utena is going to provide something that they're looking for because of the certain quote unquote shifts that we've now taken.
it's just
Um,
it's just like, to me, what it is I think it's foolish to think that your list is going to stay stagnant and that your values, which cause
Yeah,
you to
it's
have
very
characters
possible.
or series where you have them to stay where they are, right? I think that, as Lirish was saying earlier, growth is natural within every person, and that includes how you look at things, and that includes what you start to value. Because what ends up happening is, as you grow along in other stages of your life, maybe you've come to realize that some things are more important to you than they were earlier, right? Like, I've, as I grow older, I've come to understand that self introspection is something that I love to see in a character, right? I've come to understand that I don't really care too much about the complexity or layers. I It's the simple stuff that's the most powerful for me, right? And that's why
Absolutely.
certain
Absolutely.
characters are not where they used, like Nakoshi is not where he used to be for me. Moan is not where he used to be. Does that make them bad characters? I would never say
No,
that.
not at all.
I would never say that. Like, I'd never say that this character is bad, right? I just think, as I've come to, like, even for Knight, someone like the Knight from Hollow Knight, right? Like, I used to have him as my undisputed goat, but I don't anymore. And that's not due to me all of a sudden not caring about him or like something like that. I just come, once I read ReZero and once I've read like Pandora and Zarigoto, I've come to realize I value a certain emotional connection that these characters are able to create, whilst also obviously having like top tier exploration and detailing and whatnot, right? Because all obviously those top tier characters have that, but I
Yeah,
value
they're
that,
always gonna have that. Yeah.
right? I value that a lot, and it's something that I think is, maybe when I grow older I'll come to appreciate, like, uh something between a relationship that I have with someone, maybe loss. Maybe I'll come to understand how characters deal with loss and trauma and appreciate that more because I'm going through that myself, as
Right.
I
And
as
so like to me personally, like things like complexity, nuance, this very implicit subtle characterization, I feel like they're more extensions and complementers of like real actual
Of that
humanity.
actually,
Because
yeah.
like
Yeah,
when you
definitely.
yeah, when you look at a person, right? Like because just under the idea that art and life reflect to some degree, you don't just go up to a person and be like, "Oh, how many layers does this person have? Oh, what does his psyche look like?"
That's
Right? And when
funny.
you look at it through
Yeah.
that
Oh my God.
lens, right? Like just the like what like it's like damn, it's just eye-opening. Like
Yeah.
nobody looks at real people like that. So why are we looking at characters like that? Why is art become a mathematical operation all of a sudden? You know what I mean?
Of yeah, like
No.
we go and count the various images of this character's mind instead of seeing how that actually affects the character and how they think on certain things. I
Sorry,
find that
cricket too, but I just don't care about a
yeah.
certain like a certain page in like I don't know a certain manga chapter 139 or oh no chapter 147 or what happens like in a certain corner of a panel. It just doesn't affect me anymore. You know
Yeah,
what I
like
mean?
I would say somebody that definitely benefits from this very grounded approach, and especially with every shift in how they think, is somebody like Guts. Because the thing about Guts, right, is he I think he's like one of the most perfect reflections of a human, just for the fact that, right, when you see him, he obviously puts out this outward persona, and everybody does. It's something that even when you're not used to it, or like used to an environment, used to certain circumstances, you put on a little front. Um, and you kind of layer yourself back behind something to protect yourself, and that obviously comes from the trauma he upheld, and the way it slowly but surely unravels, right, and you see the things that happen, you understand the shifts, you understand why he's the way he is. That's some like that type of I would say that type of presentation is far more human in the sense that it and not everything is given to you because it's expressed visually as well, but these are things that I would say you can pick up on, like even if he was an actual person, these are things that I think you would actually be able to pick up on as another person rather
Yeah.
than it just be,
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
this guy
Yeah.
has, oh, he has the beast, and that's only one layer, so that's not good enough, sorry. It's like, does that really matter when it's expressed across the entire storyline through other facets as well, you know?
Yeah, and I think
Because
that. Sorry,
the
go ahead.
conclusion that yeah, the conclusion that I came to is just like it's like a certain character. I came up with this concept in like February or whatever,
Hmm.
but it's just the idea of like a feeling, like a certain character, even though no matter how much analysis you do, that analysis won't necessarily make up entirely for the lack of exploration. And I just want to bring up an analogy really quickly, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine like a really beautiful painting, right? Of the sun, the trees, birds, and all that. And then you can even ask the best writer of all time to try and look at the image and interpret it and write it in a really great way. But the painting is very likely still going to touch people more, right? Just in the idea of how it's represented. So that is to say that certain things can be worded. And so what I mean by this feel, it's just before any analysis, what is the character like at the outset? You know, before you look at their characterization in detail, before you look at things such as their psyche, complexity, layers, what is that character's quality when you don't look at anything? How does it touch someone? I've begun to value that a lot.
No, I really like that approach to certain characters because to me, like, I think that it's so important to grasp just even if a character is extremely detailed and they have that kind of analytical quality that if it isn't someone I truly care about or I don't think they say something important enough, I'm just not gonna have them high, like because that's not something that I've come to value nowadays. Because if you don't resonate with me or if you don't have that kind of importance to me, right? Why then that list is just kind of fraudulent, right? And tying into another point now, I just wanted to talk about this where I think that when some people make lists or they used to, they had this idea of appealing to like quote unquote what's considered good rather than what they
Yeah, like
actually
there
like.
were certain parameters on like where a character can land. Like for me personally, I fell victim to this with Naota, for example, because in the complexity era, I would say I'm just call it that, for fun. Like I would say probably what like a year ago, I was always thinking like he had detail, but compared to these monstrous Nakoshis and stuff like that, it was never something that it basically compared. But now when I look at it, that let's just say even just swing the bat alone holds so much more weight than any bit of nuance I would say Nakoshi even
Oh my
has.
god, yeah. They're
So
just
It's
it's
very
like
good, man. Yeah. Just the
he
idea of like life's sour drink and adolescence not being able to see any pink within our scenery and everything becomes mundane. And then we see how things are explored from our parents to expectations and overcoming this and becoming, because the whole idea is just the idea of like
growing up, right? It's
yeah,
just it's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
I love Fooly Cooly. I think it's probably the most efficient anime for being 6 episodes and how impactful it is and how powerful of a say that it has. Like I used to think that Haruko used to stomp Naota back in my complexity days because I was like, oh look how much she's
Takes like those are just I find them sad at like currently. Like when I look at it with my current view, it's just come on, dude. But yeah, more so than growing up, Drew. It's also about growing down. And what that means is just like because we see Haruko as like the adult, right? The
yeah.
predominant adult, the dominator. And Naota at the end, I'm not gonna spoil, even though I don't think it'll
Oh, you can
detract from
spoil.
it.
It's fine. It's fine. We'll put up a
yeah, we'll
spoiler
put a
warning.
little warning.
We'll put up a little
Okay,
spoiler
yeah, yeah.
warning. Yeah.
Well, it's just he rejects Haruko at the end, right? Because the whole idea is the idea of adult validation and like being somebody in this world. She's literally traveling the universe and all that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
she can never grasp Adamsk, right? This perfect ideal, and she's gonna be looking for that her whole life. And Naoto realized that I don't want to travel with you, even though the city's mundane, there's nothing special going on. I love this, and he doesn't hate Haruko for reflecting, making him reflect change and change. He still, even though she hurt him and she did bad things to him, perpetuated toxic ideals, he's still able to love her unconditionally for whatever, and he's able to appreciate life. At the end, I'm pretty sure he
And
doesn't
even learn
mind the
from it,
sour
yeah.
drinks, right?
Yeah,
And
he
so it's just
doesn't
a very
mind it
nice
anymore.
touch.
Yeah, and it's just what it. I think that within its like 6 episodes, I think Fully Cooley is so special because the people that understand it, and it's because it is one of those that isn't really understood by everyone. Like it's commonly heard as confusing, but I think that the
Yeah, it
messages
moves
are
quite fast.
it. I think the messages of it are fairly straightforward enough to the point where I don't think you need to do too much to really get what it's trying to say. You understand what I mean here?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. There's just I like works like that, right?
Yeah.
Even though the outset, no, even though the extensions, you have all this thing, all of these things going on. You know, the wacky music, the aesthetic, all of these
The very
different things on
fast moving
screen,
pace.
right? And that also mirrors life in a sense, right? He's so
Yep,
lost. We
very
follow him
fleeting.
through how lost he is, but at the end, it all makes sense, and that just shows. I really like, and that to segue into that, I feel like that's what I really like about characters. When I came up with the shape idea in like I think March or April, what that essentially means is like to their own outset, I feel like the foundation of a character, the human foundation, has to be like these extensions have to be extensions of the character's foundation. It's not something that creates the character.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like Elliot fell a bit for me because once again, I don't want to spoil too much. So spoiler warning, everyone, but just the idea of I feel like Elliot's humanity is really, really great, but I feel like a lot of the beauty behind it comes within this concept as well. And I feel like the concept and the human parts of himself, they don't perfectly mesh. Like for example, with someone like BoJack, right? BoJack's really complex as well, but I feel like it meshes a lot more. It's like the complexities within the foundation. When
Yeah,
the
I would
I
foundation,
think
agree.
I think I
He's
totally
the
understand where you're
strongest.
coming at with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Because especially with something like View, right? It's just like innately there's so many layers to that episode. Like you can dive deep into his
Into
psyche,
every little detail
into the
and
paintings,
what
into
those paintings mean and all that.
just as a projection of his unconscious mind, right, and what it's trying to protect. But at the end of the day, it's just his, again, spoilers, but it's just his desire to live, and that is so innately human and powerful that it again, it's simple, right? Like me and we watched that one line, like the last few minutes of View together quite often, and it really was just a few sentences that did it for both of us.
Yeah, it's the conversation with
Herb.
Herb, and it's crazy because I find it that the reason why such an episode is so powerful, right? And I actually want to use this to segue into the next topic, but
Yes.
one of the reasons why I find this to hit me so hard is realizing what this singular one line means to Bojack, and it's when Herb says, "This is it," and it's basically saying that even though he after Bojack looks into this darkness, right, it's never ending. This little soft soundtrack comes in the background, and it kind of just slowly eases you in, and it makes you realize that Bojack's trying to make sure that even in the end he's at least a little bit okay. And then of course this segues into the phone call where it shows that it's not just himself but the people around him as well, the one that he cared about a lot, which was Diane. um,
right.
and something that hits you like that, right, can create what people, when looking from an outside perspective, would call bias. um, and I wanted to segue into that because the direct messages that quote unquote come from this, or sorry, that come from this quote unquote bias are just, they're so funny sometimes because it's just, it's so odd.
And I mean,
Oh yeah,
Isn't that
the whole
why we
point of
review?
art is that it's
Yeah.
personalized towards you, right? Because two people, even though they're looking at the same thing, they aren't seeing the same thing. That's the whole point, right? And so it,
because it ties into your earlier
yeah,
thing that you said, right? Where I think there's a quote from an artist or someone where it art is essentially a mirror, right? You find things about yourself that you didn't know when experiencing a piece of work, and what that is different to everyone else. And of course, coming back to you, Lirish, of course, like the takes that you have are kind of infamous on our platform because of how um, different that they are, and I'm sure that the DMs that you get must be insane for saying you
oh,
just have
I
a
get a lot of
bias
I get a lot of
against
bad news. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
They call me the recency bias king where I'm from, man.
It's
It's,
funny because
yeah,
even though they say that though, it's like like your takes stick once you have that value system down.
that's what
So
I'm trying to say. It's
I don't
just
really get
because
that either.
I think these people need to understand that I'm not going on like Mal or like a random anime manga generator and just choosing something. I have people
It's
that whose
people that
tastes I trust,
like they all know
and
your
yeah, yeah,
taste
yeah, they know what I like, right? So I'm going after things that
that are
well,
meant to actually hit
exactly,
you as a
that are
person.
meant to
Like
change me,
these
right?
are
Things
catered
that
to
have
your
a higher
taste.
chance,
So
right? It's like when you're going to like a certain store, right? And you know exactly what you're gonna buy and where to buy it. It's
And you
gonna be
get
a
there
lot easier
quick,
than just
get in and
checking
out.
any store, right? But I
Yeah,
do want to segue back into like the simplicity complexity topic, if that's okay.
yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
just
Absolutely.
yeah, what I've come to realize is just I feel like simplicity, it's almost like the ultimate or the most complex form of complexity. And I'll explain. It's
Ah, I like that
paradoxical.
take. I like that take.
It's
That is
very paradoxical in
yeah.
nature, right? But when you just think about it, simplicity is just the root. It's one thing, and complexity would be like infinite extensions of this, right? But
Mhm.
the difference between simplicity and complexity would be that if one sentence, one thing can hold so much life, so much emotion to it, then wouldn't the complex aspect, something that says complex things, but with more, like with more means of saying it, wouldn't that just be excess almost, right? Because if one sentence says so much, it holds so much more space. It's just think about the idea of volume, right? A smaller container can hold so much more than this huge like water container like that maybe like a whole room, but it can hold so much more somehow. Isn't that more impressive almost?
That
A
that
hundred
And you
brought
percent.
up Vagabond to my mind. The minute you said simplicity in that manner, I'm
mm-hmm,
just thinking about the tree sequence.
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, or
And
like the forest sequence. I'm thinking of
yeah, yeah,
Yakiden from Shusuku. I'm thinking about how Musashi's self introspection is presented, and I think a good amount of community, right? So like, there's a split. There's still those people that adore that complex aspect, and that's where they find their value, and of course that's fine. And then there's also like a split in I would say like our side of things where there's like um, how we look at things, even with interpretation, and but they're grounded into the narrative, of course. And then there's another large creator on Instagram. If you guys are new to the whole scene, known as Rap Thought World, and he's very consistent with his values, which is why I actually enjoy speaking to him because I disagree with nearly all of his things. I disagree with a lot of what he says, but as a critic, he holds what his values are into everything he sees, and he's very consistent.
exactly, exactly. And I
So,
feel like that's the mark of like a great critic, or a really
mhm,
good critic, because everybody has reason for something. Art to its own, it's almost like sentimental value, right? Like certain things aren't going to hold for one person, they're not going to stick for one person as they do for another.
yeah,
Instead of like judging people on what takes they have, like two people could have the exact same lists. That tells me nothing about who you are as a person, nor what you value as a critic. What really does tell me like who you are and what you value, and tells me if you're doing a good job or not, is if you explain your values and you're consistent with them. How consistent you are with your own values to the point where if someone else knows if you'll like something or not, that's the mark of a truly great critic, reviewer, etc. Because it's not necessarily a means of if they agree with your list or not, they agree with your reasoning as to why you have it there.
And that's
So just
part
want to
of
put that
the
out there.
that's part of the reasoning why I think that I would like to hope that you see the three of us as somewhat competent, or why you would think our opinion holds a little bit more value than a random TikTok comment is because I'd like to think that all three of us have established our kind of values, what we do, and even if you don't agree, I think if you can at
at the
least
very
see
least, you can see where
if you
we're
can at
coming from
least
most
see
of the
where I'm
time.
coming from, because I don't have to see eye to eye with you on every manga. I don't have to see eye to eye with you on every single character, because that would be weird. I'm gonna be straight up honest. That's strange to me.
Absolutely. If everybody had the same list, what's the point of discussion, right?
Like,
And it's just, what's the point, right?
there's
And at the topic of TikTok, that's kind of the reason why, even though it's by far my biggest platform, the easiest way to blow up, I've kind of just moved away from TikTok. Not only because the user interface isn't nearly as good as in Instagram, but also because, when I go to my comments, it's just always, oh, Lyrish,
There's so many
Oh,
bots. Like, I cannot believe some of these
I
people
swear.
actually exist,
just
man. Because it's
read
like,
this, do this, read
yeah,
this,
all the
Lirish.
comments are
I
just,
I
Oh
get
yeah, it's just it's a hive mind. There's thousands of people with one brain, and it just gets annoying after a while. It's just like, where is the individuality there? There's no reasoning, first of all. TikTok only allows you to like speak, like comment like 4 lines, and
yeah,
so
it's pretty restrictive.
exactly.
and another thing is I found that as a creator, I can express my thoughts a lot more, and a lot more people see it on Instagram. On TikTok, if I write more than 5 sentences, It's over. I'm
Dude,
not getting
it's
views. I'm literally not getting. And if it
it's
isn't on
so
a
funny because
popular
I wrote
animanga, that's it. Like me writing on Zarigoto, that I'm not getting on the For You page, right?
it was funny because I wrote I think 4 slides on Aaron, and Aaron is probably the biggest character on TikTok alongside all the big seinen characters like Guts, Musashi, and them.
Yeah.
And I had several people just say, "I'm not reading that," and I'm like, like just scroll then at this point, bro, because it's 4 slides on some.
Yeah, I
And
feel like
it's funny
Instagram
because
and
they're like,
YouTube.
"Oh,
Yeah.
it's so funny because they're always like, oh, this is my favorite character." Not reading that though. I'm like, okay, I'm just like confused at that
Yeah,
point
Instagram and YouTube, they just like they fit my target audience a lot better because people are actually willing to
because you're
listen
able
to.
to express and
Exactly. No, yeah, it's the idea of expression, but it's also the idea of like
Because like
they're only
sometimes,
gonna. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, I said sometimes some thoughts are a few sentences, but you know they won't work on TikTok, right? Lirish, like me and you, like you have a little bit more, but I'm kind of close. Even with 38K followers, me like if I know I'm not gonna write on a popular animanga or I'm not making a joke video, I know it's not gonna hit. Like I know it's not getting anywhere, right? And that's sometimes
Exactly.
frustrating, you
Yeah, and
know.
that's why I just feel like it's a little for me at least. I'm not here to. I do make jokes. I'm a funny person. I feel like, but like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm somewhat self-aware. Some of the things I do on purpose, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I just feel like Instagram's a lot more genuine to what I want to do. It's just express my true thoughts and emotions, in depth. Give perspectives that people can talk upon,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It's
I
also a
feel
lot
like
easier to interact with your fans and your followers on Instagram than it is on TikTok because again, like you said, the best thing that I can do is like a video reply to a comment, if I really want to get into depth with them. And I wanna use this as a point to segue into my next thing. When we have people that follow us, we're aware that we're content creators. We know that we create sheep, right? We know that people tend to sheep off of our stuff, and it's again, it's kind of funny, but also at the same time frustrating to meet sheeps because the minute you ask for an elaboration, they collapse. Right? I don't know how many times you must have gotten this DM where they are in your DMs about a take that you made, right? But when you ask for an elaboration, they crumble.
oh yeah, absolutely. It just goes
it's
back to the idea of you write 20, 25. I've even done 50, 60 slides. It's like all that for X character to neg or Y series to be way better. It's like, okay, you
yeah,
want to tell me why?
it's
Left
it's
unseen.
so unnecessary.
Where is
It's
the
funny because it's just like I don't. All right, so like the whole sheep thing, right? Like at the community at large, let's say there's certain waves of series, people love them, and most of the time they do usually stick around, right? Because they're usually good series, but they obviously the hype dies down. But most of the time, those lists usually don't change too much and they don't drop off too bad. But I think that the issue stems from not just like the lack of elaboration, but not being able to express just your own thoughts in general. Because like let's say like I've gotten, as you said, I've gotten a DM right after I literally just I was talking to you guys before we even started the podcast where I put E as my number one character right above what's it called, Tomasane from Subihibi, and this guy DMs me and he puts a laughing emoji. I'm like, how am I supposed to respond to this? I'm like, okay, what's so funny? The guy goes out of his way to say, "Oh, this take." I'm like, "Okay, well, can you explain?" And he explained, why he liked Tomo, but he expected instead of expecting me to do the same, he expects me to go in narrative why certain details are so important, blah blah blah. And it also kind of threw me off because I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, if you're gonna come into my DM and laugh at a take, and then just tell me you like them a lot and certain like general ideas, this is gonna go nowhere because you expect me to go on and fully elaborate on a very my densest character that I have at number one. You know what I mean? And I know I'm not gonna get that back, and it happens. It happens more often than not, and it's kind of just like, for what reason is this even going to be a discussion if it's going to be one sided?
Yeah, and to that point, I want to segue into just like the idea of once again just art being personal because and this is really more prevalent in film. Sometimes it is in music, but in film circles, certain people expect you to do things certain ways. They're like, "Oh, don't compare it to other mediums. Look within all the film language, rated on 5." And I understand that there's a certain culture and certain means that most people do, but I do not have to conform to these rules, right? Because once again, I've made it very clear. the art that I rate high is what is most impactful or meaningful to me. And that doesn't really change just because a certain medium has some predisposed rules. That doesn't really change my way of thinking, right? Like just because a certain film is portrayed with and there was a very particular user, you guys for sure know a European person that is very into film and all that we used to converse with. I don't talk to him anymore, but
Oh.
he was very,
I think I know who you're talking about.
yeah, but he was really really into this idea of film and film language and
Yeah, well,
lighting and
he
all
used
that.
to go to film school, or he goes to film school, I believe. So
Yeah,
that's one
yeah.
thing is when I converse with people that are really into film, I always ask like, what can I do to learn about like cinematography, for example? Because I can tell when a movie looks nice, but I can't fully like express what exactly those quote unquote techniques are, and especially when like for example, let's say I watch a film and it's only known like it's very vastly rated very high because of like let's say cinematography, and I don't appreciate it because I'm gonna like I don't fully comprehend what makes it so great, and
Desire maybe?
then you said what?
Wings of Desire maybe, eh? You
Oh
guys didn't like
Jesus.
that one?
Oh, we can.
We
I'm
don't we
sorry.
don't we don't talk about that one, man. I'm not.
That's just
A
yeah. That's
really
just
popular one within film circles, like
Dude,
very like it's
I
it's
oh
famous.
god.
okay.
Oh my
Like
goodness. Don't get
I
us
I
started.
kind of
Holy.
see it,
I don't
but
see it.
I think it's the most like flat falling like disappointing
I
use
honestly,
of a peak ever.
me and Nino watched this movie together. For any of you guys that don't know, and we were
Yep.
just confused because we thought we were idiots because we're like, that can't be it.
No,
Like,
because the thing it's funny because the build up, even though it's slow, we sat through it and we're like, "Yo, this should be great," and we even called what the peak moment was supposed to be, and that moment came, but in like the most flat delivery possible. And I was like it had to be rewinded at least I think 5 times just to cope because I was just so confused as to why it was not as great as I pictured
Trying
it.
to
And I'm
find a
just
reason as to
and
yeah,
why.
I'm just like
Yeah.
why
it's and you know what? The dialogue that we wanted, he said at the end of the
he
film, and I
comes
think
at
that
the end of the movie.
infuriated me. I think that just put the nail in the coffin. I'm like, that's
And
it.
what makes it worse is the way they transitioned basically the genre, and then they gave us the line. I'm like, this is like
Like,
extremely
to
disappointing.
put it into perspective, Lirish, you're not gonna, I would not recommend you watch this anyway, so I'm just gonna spoil it, right? This movie is about an angel who is trying to experience humanity, right? So they're trying to look at different parts of humanity, and they're trying to know what it feels like to be human. And the film is in black and white, so you should. Me and Nino thought, okay, there's going to be a moment when this film comes into color. That's when he gains his humanity, right? It playing into that larger kind of picture, transcending his role, like dethrone, like basically falling from heaven or declipping his wings, right? And it happens,
Right,
but
It does, but instead of it being a very focused scene, the color just shifts and then he walks away. Swear to you, that's all that happens. And
and
I'm just there like there's no possible way that just
but
happened
there isn't.
in that way.
It doesn't
low key, I feel
climax.
like that's up my alley because I really like when, for film especially as a medium where it's like very vacuumed into a very short amount of time. I kind of do that. I don't know why, but I do. And a lot of Tarkovsky's films are
No,
very
he, here's
uneventful.
here's the thing though. With Tarkovsky, let's say Solaris, because I know we've both seen it. You have that moment where it hits and you know it hits, and it's the love speech and all those speeches in the end half or in
Yeah,
the end hour. The thing about this film, Lyrish, is instead of that moment being something like not even triumphant, like very personal and very like I would say large
It was like
and
a
in your
random
face,
convo.
it was just random. Boom, click, color, walks away. That is all. I'm
And
but
just
the
there. I
end.
was so disappointed, man.
and it transitions into like a romance between him, which, like, it's weird because they were portraying such grand ideas, and I kind of understand where they were coming from, but like, we just didn't like the shift. And you know what he says at the end? Now he says, "Now I see what no other angel sees."
He should have said that when the color hit,
And
and
if
it
he
should have been a focus scene. Like
and
that's
if
just how, in my eyes, I see that should have been. But well, here we are.
that's just unbelievable. But sorry, to just go back into the point that we were trying to make. It's Now that you found that there's been a large amount of like waves, for example, like Bleach or Twim, do you think that people's perception of um said series is affected by those waves? Or do you think that people just sometimes are told contempt because something is getting popular and getting compared to things that they like?
I think it's a mix of both. I definitely feel like there's some sort of influence when something big happens. I mean, for The World Is Mine, it literally went from 7.3 to like 7.8 on Mal
Mm-hmm.
once I shouted it out.
Yeah.
But there's also a bit of traction. And after it hits a certain peak and people are just like people dislike me primarily because of Lirish fans. I see comments all the time where it's like, "Oh, he seems like a cool dude. He just likes art." But the people that follow him are very, very annoying, and that's why I don't like him. And so it's almost like a sort of influence. And I've had conversations where people think a fan base ruins something for them. I could never see that happening because I'm looking at the art, but for other people, clearly it does. And that just goes into the idea of gatekeeping, which once again, I'm not too big on, but other people are. So yeah.
It's
There's also like with sheeping as well. There's also the negative connotation of it, where people will purposely go into something like that is being like pushed into a wave, basically, just to shit on it.
just to hate on it.
And
Yep.
every it's so weird as well
Anti-sheeping,
because
yeah, yeah,
it's
basically.
like I get why, so like let's say something's being commonly compared, right? And people go out of their way to basically go against one side. It's like, for what reason are you going to waste your time instead of appreciating what the artist has done, you know?
Like, at what point did you forget that you're you're consuming media to enjoy it and not like to cause an argument on Instagram? Like, that's just so
Yeah, cuz
childish to me.
also it's also like, when you think about it, right? The reason why, I'm speaking for myself, but I assume you guys as well. The reason why I write, the reason why I explain myself so often, the reason why I am building this base of an opinion basically, is because I want to express why I appreciate these things so much. And if you agree with me, or if you even appreciate things slightly more because you also see some things from a new perspective, that's the reason why I'm doing this, you know? But I'm not going into a series hoping it's a four. Like, for example, One Piece. I'm currently reading it and I am enjoying it. I'm on chapter 130 maybe, and I'm sitting here, and previously I have had the worst run in with One Piece fans. And I'm going to be honest, I can't stand a lot of One Piece fans. But I'm
Same.
still enjoying the series and reviewing it as if I have never interacted with one in my life, because the journey itself, in my like I used to get very irritated with fans and it would ruin my experience. But like slowly over time, it's kind of just like I've slowly fallen back and realized that there's no point in ruining my experience with something just because of an outside source. Like, these stories are still great, and these artists put in a lot of time to say something with their works
And
most of the time,
to
unless
balance
it's like
out
a
that,
two.
I completely
Absolutely,
agree.
absolutely.
It's one of the
And on that
reasons.
front, what do you think about favorites versus best, and are they the same
Uh
thing or
For me, they
not?
equate because the reason behind that is, what I find to be enjoyable are things that mean a lot to me, right? So I equate them. I understand when people I actually do understand why people separate them, right? Some people find that blatant entertainment and is something that is not equating to obviously something that's valuable, right? As, let's say, I don't know, a very deep character study that changes your life. For me, that they coincide. Like, a deep character study is what I enjoy a lot, and it's what I appreciate because it gives me something not only as I'm going through the series, but even after the fact and for a long time after that.
And someone says something. Actually, Scott from Anime Thought World said something, and I don't agree with him a lot, but he said this really well, right? Basically, you spend most of your time with a series after you're done,
Yeah,
not
I
while
agree.
you're consuming it, right?
yeah, I
So
agree with that.
it goes into the idea of just impact. Like for me personally, I used to be very averse to the idea of favorites is equal to best. But I see a perspective now, right? Because at the end of the day, art in its totality has no value unless you ascribe it some sort of value. And
Mm-hmm.
this value almost always, even if it's not direct entertainment, it's something you enjoy seeing. Whether you enjoy seeing film language being explored,
Exactly.
whether you enjoy musical like theory in music, whether you enjoy fun, whether you enjoy complex things, So basically, the way I say it is entertainment is not the same thing as favorites or enjoyment. But in terms of no writing and enjoyment, but in terms of like enjoyment in terms of what you like, I feel like everything is enjoyment because there's no way, like even if you value layers or scope, it's something not necessarily you're entertained by it, but it's something you find valuable. So also it's just different funnels of what enjoyment is. Favorites is basically just what resonates with you on a surface level, and something like good writing, quote unquote, like character studies and these things that leave a more of an impact on you, even though it is quote unquote critical, it's just more personalized enjoyment. You know what I mean? In the sense that there's more, like imagine if you go on a website and entertainment favorites is just like you click off one thing. Critical favorites would just be like it's more like you click more things, but at the end of the day, it's all enjoyment, I'd say, because it's just
I
what you.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that once I've been viewing art through a much more personal lens and not really caring too much about just the complexity of a character, but how important they are, my favorite characters are usually my best characters, right? Like I can understand like in some cases where I have characters where like said, their blatant entertainment sometimes makes up for their lack of writing. But even then, if I think that means that character holds more value to me because I'm assigning that entertainment more value than sort of, let's just say like another character that has more to him, right? But getting back, it's just what I've on Instagram. If you haven't seen it, I have a little highlight where I talk about it's so valuable to a character and what their staying power is to you as a person, because that tells me who you are, right? Like if you truly think at the end of the day, right? I can read this series I can watch Fooly Cooly for 2 hours. But Swing the Bat and Naota have stuck with me for like a year or two after the fact. It's here. And that staying power for me, that's why I value Naota so incredibly high. And above characters that you might be like, wait, why do you have him above X or Y or Z? It's like, well, he stayed with me. I still
Exactly. Art
remember
is
him.
very much like a fragment of you. It's just like an externalized fragment of you, right? And so that's why a lot of the times people, we were talking about this before we started this episode as well, but a lot of people say homunculus, quote unquote, glorifies sexual assault, certain series glorify certain things, and when it's not, quote unquote, condemned explicitly enough, they have a problem with that because the way they think socially, politically, they think that a good art has to align with what they think is good for the world to some degree. And so even though I disagree with certain takes, I can actually even see it why they think this certain way, because once again, that's just a fragment of how they think, who they are, and it makes perfect sense through that angle.
It's it's something where I think that once you start to understand that you don't have to cater to anyone, and when your voice becomes your own, when and this is for aspiring content creators, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting more reviews or anything, I think my greatest advice is like, and I will 100% claim that I fell victim to this, like trying to be similar or have that kind of similar taste as others. But once you understand that if you put yourself and into a list and you can then at least consistently explain yourself, you're already better than 90% of people out there. I can guarantee you that.
95.
Like,
Like a lot of people fall victim to like even like let's say the favorite versus best thing. Let's tie it back real quick.
yeah.
A lot of TikToks, for some reason, I always see like exact similar reasoning, and one it's not even reasoning at this point. It's just statements. It's like, oh, it does not equate, and then they won't expand. Like if I were the devil's advocate, and I say they're not equal. People like let's say if I say they aren't right.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the people that think that they separate it by looking at only in text ideas and how the author is portraying things. And that's why they separate it from what they find to be favorites of just blind entertainment, which, of course, I disagree because, as I said previously, I think they intertwine as in my favorites are the things that I value the most. These in detail characters that express certain ideas that relate back to, me, of course. But For the people that don't equate that and they don't look for those things in art, that's completely fine. And I feel as though once people start allowing themselves to even express, even if I disagree with it, they can express that notion. And if they explain themselves adequately, I'll be like, okay, I can see what you mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like again, all three of us here, we don't agree with all of our takes.
Yeah.
If you've been on TikTok at all, you know, Lirish and I have always disagreed with a lot of stuff, right? If you've been
Yeah.
on Instagram at all, you know. But like, I think me and him
We
have
align
got
more though. Nowadays we align more.
we align a
I'd
lot
say.
more because I think me and you can have evolved and grown to a point where we can hold very
Exactly.
civil discussions with each other. It's like, yeah, I kind of disagree, but I see where you're coming from. I see the angle that you're doing, because at the end of the day, here's the thing, right? People that make fun of your takes, people that make fun of things, they don't care to learn about who you are. They don't care to learn about how you're viewing things,
And how refined your taste has
right?
been since
The,
starting, because it's been years. Like it's funny because as weird as it sounds, I've known you guys for years. Like,
yeah,
and it's slowly over time we've
Like if
just
we met in real life, like I know exactly who you are, like what type of
it,
person you are. What I
and
mean.
that's it, right? It's just if people care enough to know about you, they will ask. Some people don't ask, and then they clown us. I know my screenshots get sent to group chats. I know it.
oh
I
I've
think
gotten
all
my
three of us know it, right? Like it's relentless. Like some I'll
There have
make
been
it.
stories where like every time I drop like there's 300, 200, 350 shares. There's just so many shares, especially when with the real hot takes.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
insane, yeah. But
So I know it gets shared around, but if you're again, if
That's
you're
just who I am, you know.
it just the people that'll care will ask, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say on that topic. Because like again, if I'm nowadays like if I'm a little confused as to why has something or Lirish has something, I just straight up just
Just
ask.
hop in VC or DM,
I'm
and
like,
then
hey man,
we'll smooth it out.
hey man, like I'm not, I'm curious why you have this over this, and you're like, oh yeah, it's because I value this and this and this, and that's it, right? And
yeah, and back
that's
to the idea of like the value change, right?
mhm.
When we started initially, we literally just started reviewing, at least for me, right?
Oh, 100%,
Oh
yeah.
Like
yeah,
I
no,
was
that was my
we
first
just
like
started reviewing
starter.
art.
Yeah.
Like it was an entirely different lens. So, as time progresses, you really become grounded with what you like and what you don't like. Initially, I was just looking at it from like a technical, almost mathematical, philosophical perspective in which, oh, this must be this. But at the end of the day, I just feel like, art has to move you, whether it be full on tears, whether it be changing your mind, or, whether it just leaves you with a profound impact through something that elicits something within you. So,
Oh my God,
I that's
yeah, I completely agree. And on that, I can use this as just for a small topic change between all three of us. What do you guys think about how some people believe that a character or a series is good if it's doused in heavy philosophy, like this almost not fetishization, but just almost this innate desire to be like, well, my character is better because he does XYZ philosophies.
I think it's
yeah.
redundant.
Uh, It's just I've literally seen I won't say the person, but I've seen people say like, "Oh, this character has literally 49 layers, even more than that." And I would say it's just like, "Okay." It's just like, "What do you want me to
Dude, it's
say?"
it's funny because the only people on TikTok that I see nowadays are they just attach the same five philosophical ideas to different characters, and it gets really redundant. Because I rather like when I read when if I do go out of my way to read an analysis, I want to see why what you see like within the narrative and why these characters are eventually amounting to a specific meaning, even just for you. Like I just want to see what they mean to you, and if it's similar to like let's say what I like, I'll be like, this is interesting enough for me to appreciate what you've written. But when I have to reread the same summary of Nietzsche's Last Man,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna get
God,
tired of it, man.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna if I
And
see
at that point, there's honestly a very minimal amount of creators that actually care about when they say something. So it's like, Drew, who else? Ramblom. I like seeing Rap.World just because he's well explained.
I agree.
But
I like how he articulates
there's
himself.
like
Yeah,
very few creators and accounts that can actually express why they like something, even if the reasoning itself is so narrow, it's not something I can see. Personally, I can see why they see it. And yeah, it's just once again, it's just how you articulate yourself within your own realm and your own values, because it's very easy. Like for example, just with regards to analysis, right? It's like if you're simply bringing up philosophy links, right? Citations from like Stanford EDU, it's just like, okay, but you're not really analyzing anything. You're analyzing what extensions of a work, right? You're not analyzing the
Yeah,
work itself.
yeah. What does
When
that mean to
people can't
you?
like
You know, like what does that
exactly,
say for you?
yeah, when people can't like look into something, even if it's not personal, when people can't like look into something narratively and they almost always have to bring an external citation, I just think they don't understand the work. Right? That's my personal opinion. Because it's like when they're always bringing up something external, like, oh, existentialism, absurdism, the work never used these terms. And sure, you can ascribe these terms to the work, and sometimes they do work, but obviously you'd
They're
always
very
want to.
general. Like even with, for
Exactly.
example, like with B stars, right? When you would go into detail and then we started discussing these things, all the details you would point out and that we would link in conversation was always in the narrative regarding how these things
Absolutely.
changed, how
Because
there was an effect, and it's like I would much rather see how the narrative itself is expressing its ideas than an idea being pushed onto the narrative itself.
Yeah, that's
You
a good
know?
way of putting it.
And
Yeah.
and to segue back into that, that's why I have a character list and a symbol list, right? The
Mm-hmm.
characters, in my opinion, they're just characters that truly immerse you, and they're very three-dimensional, very human. And even if you don't ascribe anything, they have their own sense of personal agency and they feel very real.
Yep.
Now that we have characters that when you look at what they do for their narrative, more with regards to an ideology or some sort of philosophy and how that encompasses a work, that's what I find to be valuable in a symbol. It's like things when you think about it, and you ascribe some sort of when it's very broad and more general, that's what a symbol is. It's something that's valuable through that lens.
Yeah,
But
and it
when
Yeah, I
basically
characters,
definitely
it,
see where
it
you're
takes
coming from.
something. It basically instead of having that personal agency, it's something that takes in the entire work into account and expresses it in that
it's like
manner.
yeah, yeah, it's
Like
like
Kano, for example, is he
yeah,
he is like in he's basically connection incarnate. Like he's not
mhm,
necessarily grounded in connections. Like he has
yeah, yeah,
them, you know, but that's not his strongest suit. His strongest suit is becoming that connection itself, you know.
yeah. And the way I look at it, it's like when I look at a character, is their primary feeling personal or universal? That's how I look at it. When I look at Guts,
Mm.
even though he has a lot of ideas, or someone like Pun Pun, even E, right? E is so layered. He's so complex. There's
There's
so many
so many
elements.
different
There's
What is
ideas. Yep.
so much, man.
but the quality itself is derived from
That expression of himself.
personal
Is
expression.
he how
Whereas
human he
for
is, right?
something like Mr. Fox, he's the opposite. Mr. Fox,
He's the
friend,
He's the
opposite. No,
Johan,
complete
he's the
opposite.
they're like
Oh
opposite, bro.
man.
symbols, yeah, So
He
It's
walks around. He's like, "Yo, what's up, my enemy? How's the story?" I'm just like, "What the fuck?"
yeah, it's just
so
that.
casual. Yo, this man literally pulled out a
It's-
manga. He
no,
finished the
it's
manga.
so funny because he'll just walk up and be like, "Yo," and then he'll just like just be chilling and be like, "Yeah, so about back nozzle." I'm like, "Bro, chill out."
I had a conversation with where I'm like, I don't know how to rate him. I've never seen anyone like him because most of the
He's
time
really fascinating. Yeah,
characters are bound within their story and they're human, but they have like certain meta elements, right? Characters like
yeah.
Furita, characters like who was the other one that I named? I can't remember.
There's Lane as
Yeah,
well.
but characters like Mr. Fox is almost the exact opposite, where he's just
Like he is
full,
literal meta incarnate.
yeah,
That
with
So
became his
meta.
identity.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
it's
insane.
and obviously you can link it back to like depersonalization and how it connects to the story and how viewing himself and how that connects with E. Like you can talk
And it's
about
a
all
nice
that,
parallel with E and the
right?
observer idea, but
But it's
it's
just
just it's so weird because it's a matter of how it's delivered, how it's so direct, and it's very odd. Like
it's
I was so confused, like not confused of what he's doing, but just how I should look at him as a character. I'm just
I'm
like
still lost on him a little bit.
interesting.
Like I'm still like I finished the entire series, like, and I'm just like, yeah, he's great. I don't know. It's
He's
still
probably
like
like
a
in terms of delivery, he's just like one of the most interesting characters because of just how drenched in the story
oh,
itself he is. He's just
100%. He's
like
so
Yeah.
unique.
and it's so casual as well, like you said. It's just that is who he is, and it's just like okay, well that's just how it's gonna be.
Yeah. Sorry. Just so one last point. Before I want to close out this interview, what do you guys think on the aspect of, we all of us here, we like to either do a small analysis when we finish or a small review, right? I usually call it a review. I never call it an analysis because if I say analysis, it implies several pages of actual content, right? Um, but what do you guys think of like writing and pouring your heart out as to why you love something, why you're viewing something, but then all that people care about are the takes you make at the end, or the number you attach to it. Like people, I find sometimes people like someone will be like, "This is ass." I'm like, "Did you read any of what I just wrote? Like the 4 slides I wrote on why I think this way?" And he's like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay, like what the hell?"
I'm much rather so I'm gonna use, let's say, my Zari thing. Zari made me reflect as who I am, and I wrote a good amount on why that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone were to like, it's funny. I always make a joke after the fact, and when I put my takes, I'm like, okay, for what you guys actually care about. And I think that people get too entrenched in the number itself instead of the reasoning, because obviously the number is easier and more accessible, minus the spoilers and stuff like that, to where you can just see, oh, this is how high they have it. I know what they like, so I might like this that much as well. And I get it, but I think that the reasoning behind it is just as important, if not more so. So you know how much that meaning actually was able to make somebody push themselves to really put themselves out there, especially in a very public community, because we're on the smaller side of Instagram, 2,000, 3,000, even 11K. It's a lot, but compared to, the biggest pages, it's not.
Yeah,
So
and
I
just
think, yeah,
analogously, the review itself, the reasoning, it's like the more human side, and the number is almost just like a symbol. It's a list. It's something like that. So just want to put that out there,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
because
exactly.
yeah.
sorry. Go on. Yeah, you were saying.
Oh yeah, and I just want to segue into something else though, but it's just the idea of really finding what you like in art. It just ties into what I did initially was if I were a creator, right? If I were an aspiring writer, which I think I am, I'm still a little lost, but I do have aspirations of doing that. What I asked myself was, I just found a great amount of dissonance between the art that I liked, like the complex at the time, the very complex art, and the art that I would like to create. So I feel like to those listening that if you're a bit lost on your values, right? Just ask yourself, if you were to make a piece of art, what approach would you take to impacting someone? What type of character would you want to write? What type of series would you want to make? And I feel like that's what is true to you. It's easy to, find external reasoning. Oh, this character is complex according to
Oh,
writing
this
technique.
philosophy was done
Yeah.
very well,
Writing
stuff like
technique
that.
147 states that this is bad or something like that. But just ask yourself, man, because once again, at the end of the day, it's very personal. So if you want to know what you like in art, ask yourself what you would do, how you would do this. And this internal questioning really helps and it's really helped me find what I value in art.
I think that speaks volumes as well, and I like that you brought that up, because I don't think people realize when applying like random general philosophies is that these creators always go in with a certain thing in mind. Even like the worst of series, they still have something that they're trying to portray and their own personal philosophies that are being brought out. Now, when you apply something like existentialism and molding your own meaning, it's very general. It's supposed to be general. It's something that you speak about on life, right? It's a very general application, but the way these creators, they kind of delve into their own version of that, and I find that to be far more important than applying, just some random philosophy you read two Google or Wikipedia pages on. And it's just like it becomes redundant because these creators pour their heart out. Like, let's say with Vagabond, right? In no way with that exhibition chapter. That is just pure art.
He snapped.
Barely any words, just pure expression of what it means to come to terms with everything. Peace.
Exactly, right? It's just
He wrote
humanized,
that
man. I just
before
got
farming too. That's actually kind
yeah.
of crazy. Like he had that in mind before farming.
That's
Yeah, I just got like a
just
crazy
insane.
funny image in my mind. It's like just imagine there's a series, right? And just imagine like the Google definition of existentialism. Just imagine that pasted on a character's head. And then there's like and then there's like another character. It's like nihilism pasted on his head and they're just conversing.
Yeah, it's
I'm just like,
so funny. It's
Yeah.
just
It's
yeah,
just
it's I, I don't know. I think that like again back to like the human aspects that you try to portray within art that creators try to do. It's just I find what you can pull out of that so much more valuable than what you can apply to that. Right? I value it when, for example, when was talking about well, how Zari changed him, right? That review. I told him I loved it the second I read it. I'm like, this is so personal. This tells me exactly what you saw, and I see the value you hold in this. I see how it's coming together for you, and it's something that I appreciate because again, a lot of times we have most of the time it's a younger audience, so they're a little bit more afraid to get emotionally vulnerable, right? Like, because they're 14, 15-year-olds, right? But to display that kind of emotion, it really shows you why we would like a series, like us as content creators. And it's something I think people miss, and again just skip to, like, again, just the number thing, right? It's a reason why all three of us don't really have a top 200 character list, a top 200 arc list.
Oh yeah, I just condensed
Because we
mine
can't
down.
care about that many arcs. Like, listen, if you were to
way too
point blank
much,
tell
man.
me, do you have X or Y, I can probably tell you, right? Like, do you have this arc or this one? Probably
I
have this
I
one.
can tell you outside of the arcs that I have ranked, like, okay, I probably prefer this one off the top of my head, and this is why. But if it's not important enough to me to be able to rank it and give you very solid reasoning, I don't find it any point in
It's
holding that long of a list. It just
yeah.
becomes so
It's also
dragged
why
out.
I've just stopped, like, assigning numbers to, like, arcs and shit anymore. Like,
Yeah,
is this
I
arc
don't
a
even rate.
9.5 or a 9.7? Like,
The
I
only
don't
thing I
know,
rate
bro.
is the
Yeah,
series in
it's
its totality.
I just asked myself, does character number 157 really matter or not? And it does.
Absolutely.
It
You know,
literally doesn't,
there's
dude. Like,
that's why it's very defined. I have like a certain threshold of quality that you have to get to if you really are that good.
Yeah, for you it's over equal Mori, right?
Exactly, for characters and for
Yeah, for me
series,
it's
it's just
over
like
equal
9 on 10.
Thorfinn.
Yeah.
I might also
And that
change my list a little bit to reflect that, because I
yeah.
don't, like, again, it's interesting to be, because, like, I don't care about a lot of like, I don't care about characters like that much, but, like, sometimes I have a favorite character. Like, for example, Gojo is someone that I really like, but is he someone that's in my top 20? No, because I care about them so much more. So there are characters I like outside of my top, like,
Yeah, of course. It's
list.
just there's always that gap.
Oh yeah, you can
Whether
for
it's
sure like
something, but
like you can for sure differentiate the difference between two characters, but there's going to be a threshold. And on that point, I just want to segue into like analysis and review styles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, I used to like go to like very, very elongated, comprehensive, extensive analysis. And after reading Zari, especially, what is this, like 1,000+ pages easily of a novel? You're not going to catch every detail. And
oh,
so,
absolutely not.
yeah, what
Too
Even if
much.
you catch
Too
it,
much.
expressing even the thing is, even if you do catch it, the issue is replicating it in a way to express why that's even good, and it just becomes way too much, man. Like,
Explaining
yeah,
its
even
importance in the narrative, like, I told Eno, right, and I'll tell you right now, I would catch great lines in Zarya. I'm like, this is really cool, I'm moving on, I
keep it
can't, like,
moving. Like, you just got to keep it pushing.
that's it, like,
for sure, man. And I feel like after reading that like FLCL analysis, what FLCL means to me,
Oh, that
yeah,
was
that's a
amazing.
great analysis. We'll link
because
that in
no,
the
yeah,
description, by the way. It's fantastic.
it doesn't go into like every individual detail, but it
Mm-mm.
says what FLCL is as a
Yeah.
whole. And so that's why even as I changed as a person, not only did my values change, um, but I just feel like the way I review and analyze things, that approach is different. Right now, I'm just trying to encapsulate the whole of a work, what it says. Like for example, if you want a little taste of that, I did that for One Piece, and I did that for Bleach. The
I love
Bleach
that One Piece
current,
analysis, by the way.
the One Piece
I
with the
hold that
current
as one of
analysis.
your best analysis that you've put out so far.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just fantastic. Honestly,
Just-
so just a quick side note, I I actually really love One Piece. I like, to One Piece fans, please, I really do love this series. I think that it does a lot
Fraud.
of very good things. Just because I have a few flaws with it, that doesn't mean I don't like it. I love it. It's just, again, that you touched on it earlier, like the fans aspect of it. I'm learning to grow apart from the fans, because One Piece fans irritate me. Same as Hunter x Hunter fans, right? Like Hunter x Hunter's growing. Like Meruem
Oh,
is growing
no.
on me, but like Hunter x Hunter fans as a whole are still really annoying to me. But I'll detach myself from Hunter x Hunter soon enough. But like, it's I've come around to it, and it's, I find that those kinds of analysis. Sorry, linking back to you, Lirish, it's just, they're just better to read, aren't they? Like, I don't care about what a character does. Almost, it's like, tell me what it
Absolutely.
means to you.
Because art, once again, there's like a three-way like connection. Like there's like a trinamic, right? There's the consumption of art and the values you come out with it, how that affects you as a person, and once how that affects you, after you see how that affects you as a person, there's how you would want to, like how you would verbalize this quality, right? And I've just come to realize that even if I catch every single detail, are you going to remember every single detail I state? And the
Yeah,
question
no.
is no. Like, for example, I'm not going to remember the mannerism E did on page 147, volume 5, right? But how this ties, you want to kind of build into the core. You don't want to extend out of the core. So that's why the analysis of work itself, I feel they have to be compact and true to what the work is as a whole. You're always going to have these abstract details, like for example in Berserk, the nuances between the Berserker armor. But if I ask someone what says more about Berserk, right? Let's say a talk on its just a compact talk on its final say, or like a detail in Conviction that you won't remember, right? What really says why it's good, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
I will say I do like from our community. I would love to see a lot more overarching thematic analysis for
Yes.
series and what they mean, rather than I mean, I know that obviously, like, I would still appreciate like the smaller and more concise analysis, because it's easier on people and easier in time. But for those that do want to go out of their way to analyze something they like a lot, I would definitely love to start seeing a lot of, you know, overarching analysis on what the over like the thematic presence of certain characters and series as a whole, because at the end of the day, that's what is going to be remembered. I don't remember what happened on in Conviction on in like chapter whatever, but I do remember what that arc means to Berserk as a whole regarding
Absolutely.
religion, right?
And at that point, it's just like obviously comprehensive analyses of understanding what happened is pivotal. I do that for more complex things, especially with a new Kendrick album. I might seem like a hypocrite here because I wrote like 80 slides on it. But if I were to tell you but if I were to tell you why that is meaningful, I can definitely do it within 4 or 5. Why the album is meaningful. It's just I'm giving people the context of a decade long, even maybe even longer,
Something being
journey
built.
Yeah,
of
of
Kendrick
course.
Lamar, because that album encapsulates every part of him. So once I get the comprehension down, like for series like Bleach, um, it's just a matter of connecting with the readers, even with regards to analysis. I'm pretty sure everyone knows the idea of Bleach is courage. It's fate, death, courage, and it's very obvious that it makes it apparent. So you can just go right away to the final section and what it means in totality. But for Kendrick, a lot of people were like, what does this mean? A lot of people were disappointed. So there's like two types of analysis. There's like a holistic, broad analysis on its quality and why it's meaningful. And there's like the comprehensive types of analyses that like may help you understand like what's
Like
going on.
specific parts. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
both
yeah.
are very much necessary because, like, for example, I did a lot on Volume two E because nobody really writes about E, and I for good reason. My goodness, that took me forever. I think it was nearly 6,000 words, and it's like I'm pointing out a lot of things that are central to his mind, but at the end of the day, like I would much rather write over like the overarching ideas rather than each little detail, because if I were to continue what I did for that for each volume, that would be like probably two full highlights. It's just it's so much. It's kind of wild. But if I were to do, let's say, overarching what Zaragoto means and why these things are important, it would probably take me like 10 slides, you know, far more condensed, far more to the point, and far easier to do.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
and I think it's just we keep bringing up the same point, but that's because it's so important. Is that within this, it's a lot of it is art is a reflection of what you took from it. I want to see that. I want to see what you took from it. I want to see how it holds meaning first to the narrative, obviously, but
Yeah, that's
also to
why I
you.
think both are necessary, both comprehensive, because maybe
Yes,
in narrative I missed something, and that's why, like, again, I did that stuff
exactly.
on E, because I made takes on E in Volume Two, and people were like, "Dude, what the hell is this?" And I was like, "This is what I see," and that's why I found it to be necessary, right? But for example, somebody requested an Eden analysis, and I'm like, I'm not going into individual characters because I find Eden to be far stronger thematically.
Yep.
So I go and express what these ideas mean within Eden, etc. And I find that both types of analysis are like definitively needed. It's just depending on what people are looking for, especially from you and what you're trying to showcase as well.
Shout out to the people
For
that actually
sure.
read my analysis and have something productive to
Facts.
say. Like,
Yeah. It's just once again it goes to the idea of mathematics being common to everyone, 1 plus 1. Well, let's not bring up that. Let's bring something else. But like just the idea of like, I don't know.
Before you
You got
start
a
getting
history on that
DM'd.
one, but I don't know.
A little
Something
bit of
like, I
history
don't
on that
know.
one. It's funny.
The sky being blue, that's like something being external, right? And most people would agree to that. But like art, it's not so much as like a lot of people just ask me, oh, elaborate on Kichi's, the two Kichis, something like that, something so weird. It's just like, okay, that doesn't tell me anything about your experience of the series. Art should be internal. It's not something more external like mathematics, or it's not definition oriented. It's how you define it. You are the definer. It's
Yeah.
not the world that defines it. And so I feel like just reviews, analysis, even your values, they should be pinpointed upon this revelation.
And all of this is obviously we're speaking of is also based on the fact that you can articulate it, because if you just come up to me and say I have this character higher because of personal impact, like I cannot have any conversations with you. Like you need to tell me more. Why? Tell me why.
Like
Like,
I get the whole point of saying it, but I want to know what that actually means.
yeah,
Because
like it's like almost like a
impact is also a broad term, because even thought provocation is impact. Like you need to tell me that, oh, this character makes me think constantly, and even though I haven't read it in 3 months or 6 months or 8 months, I still remember every single one of these details, and this is why. Boom. Or this is why I think so much on them and why they mean so much. Boom. Like instead of, yeah, bozo, you're stupid, I'm better, personal impact, F you, middle finger, have a good day. Like I'm just like, okay, where are we supposed to have the discussion here as to why my take is bad when all you tell me is F you bozo, personal impact. Like, you know what I mean?
holy, you have Oz over Luffy, idiot. Luffy's the best MC ever. Sorry.
Yo, did you know he does freedom?
Yo. Oh my goodness. If you come to me also and you just spit to me, and I don't like Crollo, okay? I think this is very clear to anyone that knows me. But if you come to me and all you do when I ask you why you think Crollo is good is you give me an Alexander review. Shout out Alexander on YouTube, by the way. Or you just tell me what Lirish has said like 2 years
On his
ago.
TikToks
Like,
years ago, yeah.
please. Please.
How long have we? Yo, I just realized, how long have we been going for?
It's an
Nearly 2 hours,
hour
right?
17 now. We're at an hour 17. So if you want to wrap it up, we can
Holy-
now.
No, I just realized because I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my god, I felt like a long time. Huh?
So
I
yeah,
think I think we touched upon everything though.
I think
Critics,
so. Yeah.
consistency, what makes our opinion hold, a good amount of value. I wouldn't say more value. I would say just like value in general.
Yeah. Sorry. What about?
Biases, sheeping, perception of shows because of the different waves, how art affects people. I think we did pretty extensive part of everything so far.
Yeah, I think basically what I was trying to go for is like I hope you could see why like as reviewers we try to be consistent so that
Yeah, and why we basically express ourselves, especially very often with how much we write, um, comparatively
and
to a random TikTok account with 0 followers and 800 following. You know.
I also by consistency I don't mean that like we're consistent with our takes cuz our values change when we read stuff. So what I mean is we're able to express that and then be consistent to that point. Because we grow and evolve as human beings as we said at the beginning of this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't think, once again, I don't think there's a single person who their values doesn't change at at all after being in this community for 2 years. Like there's
You're
probably zero.
lying if you said they haven't changed at all, bro. Like, there's no way that you didn't. If you can't look at yourself and just kind of be like, yeah, I don't know why I did that. Like, I don't think you've grown as a person. You know, I think that's just incomprehensible to me, kind of. Like,
Yep.
Overall though, I think we did a very great discussion today,
yes.
and
I want to thank Lirish for coming on to this podcast. We are going to have him
No
on
problem.
here. I'd like to see him as a frequent guest, but we'll see how much time that we can all three of us can
Yeah,
have
we
enough
just gotta
together.
work
The
out
next
Sure.
time that Lirish is going to be on here, just for a sneak peek, we're probably going to be talking about the big three. We're going to be, because as you guys know, if you guys are watching and fans of Lirish, he's a huge One Piece fan, huge Bleach fan. And we got Eno here, who's also a really huge Bleach fan. He's reading One Piece. By the time we record that podcast, who knows where he'll be in One Piece.
I'll probably be somewhere in the
Drew, get on
300s.
Bleach too, so we can
I'll
have
definitely read it. Yeah, I am a I am a One Piece fan as much as I hate the shit on it. Come on, man. But I also love Naruto, and I've seen Soul Society, and I liked it. So definitely get on that. So we'll be discussing our opinions on that, and then hopefully have that out soon. But thank you for watching along. As always, everything's gonna be in the description. We're gonna put
All links and such.
all the links. Any kind of spoiler warning. DM us if you have anything that you want us to talk about, and basically in this case, me, and Lirish respond most on kind of Instagram. You can DM us on our other platforms, but we're most successful going to be on Instagram, if anything. Leave a comment. We always read those, and we appreciate everything. Thank you so much. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.